ओम वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारंभं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। So in the last class we saw about the human pursuits which can be categorized into four different heads. In this Artha Kama, seeking security and pleasure is common to both human beings and animals. But human beings have free will and commonly sense what is right and wrong also. Therefore, since they have the freedom to do, not do, do differently, and they have the freedom to use or abuse their free will, they have to go according to a matrix of values. Therefore, dharma is very important. So their pursuit of artha and kama has to be guided by dharma. If dharma is not followed, that is also within the order of Bhagavan only, but then they will have to face the consequences of that. Okay. So any pursuit, you have the freedom to pursue it, and you can pursue itself is a privilege, correct? Because the ability to desire is there only in human beings. It is very highly evolved. Human beings can desire for iPhone. In fact, somebody sold their kidney to get an iPhone. I saw a news like that. It was incredible to me. But people can desire for iPhone or a candlelight dinner. But a cow has no ability to desire for iPhone or iPad or anything, correct? So we have Icha Shakti, and then we also have Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. So we are endowed with all these powers, which are all privileges. But if you are ready to do wrong, okay, if you are ready to do anything to fulfill your desires, then it's a problem. Okay. So that is why dharma is very important. And if you go against dharma, you are going to gain papa. And if you do things according to dharma, you will gain punya. So for every action, there are two results. That is what we have to understand. One is the drishta phalam, what you immediately experience. One is adrishta phalam, what accrues to you and will fructify later, either as pleasant or unpleasant experiences based on whether you are gaining punya or papa. Now, this is the life of everybody. You have to follow artha kama in keeping with dharma. But if you start analyzing your own pursuits, what you see is in your own vision, you are limited. You are a limited being. You are limited with respect to many things. In whichever way you look at yourself, from whichever standpoint you see yourself, you are limited. And in fact, your struggles in life, constantly seeking something, constantly trying to become something, is all because you want to get rid of these limitations. Now, all our pursuits are with reference to particular objects of limitation, correct? Or particular type of limitation. If you are looking at it like that, you are only trying to get rid of a particular limitation, let us say. But if we look at it as just limitation itself is my problem, means the lack or wanting is the problem. what you lack or what you want is not important, but wanting, lacking, being limited itself is my problem, means I cannot solve it by adding more and more things to me, correct? Because whatever you are adding also is only limited in terms of time, correct? It can only last so long. And also there are diminishing returns are there in all these things. What you enjoy the first time, it is not the same the 100th time, correct? Even a song, it becomes a hit song and you like it for some time, and then you think, okay, maybe something new I want, correct? So that is the law of diminishing returns. Even what you enjoy the first time is not the same the nth time. So you have all these issues. So whatever you pursue, whatever you become, it is not good enough. Once you achieve it, it is not the same thing. In fact, before achieving, something looks big. After achieving, it is also one more thing, and there are 100 other people also who are having the same thing. It is no more something novel or valuable. Then you want to become something else. That's why it is called a life of becoming. Samsara, samyak sarati, we say. You go from one thing to another, to another, to another. It's a vicious cycle. Now, if you want to get rid of this itself, I want to get rid of this limitation, means gaining something as a result of action is no more a solution for that. You have to be very clear about it. You have seen the limitations of your pursuits. In fact, the one who is qualified to learn Vedanta is somebody who has achieved something, who has accomplished something in life and seen the limitation of his or her own accomplishments. You have to accomplish something and see the limitations of your own accomplishments. And then you can do an extrapolation. You can even do a mentally, you can analyze everything else easily and come to a conclusion that whatever I may achieve, I am still the same individual, limited. So what I really seek is not this. What I really seek is limitless. I want to free myself from all limitations. If that is the case, then there are only two scenarios, correct? Either I have to be already limitless, because limitless cannot be created in space time. Understand that. If it is really limitless, it has to be already there, and it has to be there right now, and it cannot be something different from you also. The limitless cannot leave you out. Limitless has to be you, in fact. Either it is that, or limitation is your nature. Live with whatever you have. If limitation is your nature, you will not be struggling against limitations, correct? That itself points to something else. So that's why we say moksha is the parama purushartha. For the one who is discerning, the one who has seen the limitations of all worldly accomplishments, moksha is the only pursuit which makes sense, because moksha is the one which is giving you the limitless. Nobody can better that, correct? And if you do not gain moksha, your loss is also limitless, infinite loss. In fact, Upanishad itself says that ihached avedit ata satyamasti nached iha vedin mahati vinashtihi, it says. If you manage to know about yourself, then you have known the truth of yourself. You have attained that which is eternal. But otherwise, what? If you do not know yourself, then it is mahati vinashtihi, it is limitless loss. So everybody has to pursue moksha. The problem is, even while you are pursuing artha, kama and dharma, you are really pursuing moksha only. Everybody wants only really freedom from limitations. But they are only focusing on particular limitations and wrongly thinking that by obtaining something, that limitation will go away. By obtaining anything, the same limited person only is there with the other thing also, the other limited thing. Two limited things together cannot make the limitation go away. That is not known to people. Even though they are really seeking moksha or freedom, but they are not aware of it and they are not seeking the solution in the correct place. Wherever there is the problem, if the problem is centered on you, solution also has to be centered on you. You cannot seek the solution somewhere else. So that is the thing. If moksha is what you want, then how do I gain it? Means you have to know yourself as the limitless. We told you that is the only other option. Because here the problem is one of ignorance. Knowledge is the only solution. If I am ignorant that I am the limitless, I am is not a problem. Everybody knows I exist. If I ask you, are you there? All of you will say yes. You don't have to use even any means of knowledge to know that I exist. In fact, the very fact that I am operating any means of knowledge and knowing something implies that the knower is there. As the knower, I am implied in all knowledge, all cognition, and my existence itself need not be established by any knowledge or by operating a means of knowledge. I am there, but the problem is I am so and so is the problem. I am limited individual is the problem. So if I want to correct this wrong knowledge, what do I do? If I have to get rid of this ignorance, means every ignorance to be gotten rid of requires the operation of a means of knowledge. Knowledge is required. Knowledge is the opponent of ignorance. It is opposed to ignorance. And to gain knowledge, I require a means of knowledge. Now, in this case, Veda alone is the means of knowledge because the science and also even in general perception and inference on which science is based is all objective. It's only about the objective world. It wants to in fact study everything objectively. That itself is a problem in fact. Therefore, it actually excludes the subject, and scientists have no idea about what is consciousness. Many of them don't even accept there is a mind. There are material monists are there. They say everything is matter. So they cannot help you. So you require a means of knowledge which is other than perception and inference. And that is only the words of the Veda, because the Veda is a word mirror. It is showing to you your own self in the form of words. Because the subject can never know itself as an object, correct? The subject can never be objectified. So the problem with self-knowledge compared to any other knowledge is what? All other knowledge we know as an object of our mind. Even black hole is only a concept, but you still conceptualize it in your mind and know. Black hole nobody can know because even light does not escape from there. But you do an inference because even light is not coming from there. It has to be a black hole and all that. And there are theories, there are concepts. You can conceptualize it. So everything is known as an object of your mind. But what about the knower? Knower can never become the object of mind. Whatever is there in the mind is becoming evident to whom? That conscious being is you. And the nature of that conscious being has to be revealed only by the Shruti, by the Veda. It is like if the eyes are there, your eyes can see everything, correct? But it cannot see itself. Whatever you do with your eyes, you can go like this. You can strain it, you can take the eyeballs to all the corners. It cannot see itself. In fact, one eye cannot even see the other eye, although they are two different. So what do? I have to stand in front of a mirror to see my eyes, correct? Like that. If you have to know yourself, you have to expose yourself to the words of the Veda. They are the ones which will reveal to you your nature. And then the words of the Veda, whatever is said in the Veda only is said in the Bhagavad Gita. They are not two different things. Understand that. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the twofold lifestyle is revealed. Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga. That's what is revealed in the Veda also. So that is the first verse we saw yesterday. Lokesmin dvidha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yogina. Now this is actually coming in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The first chapter is all about the lamentation of Arjuna, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Here yoga, again this yoga word is a confusion, because each chapter in Bhagavad Gita is called yoga, yoga, yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Second chapter is Sankhya Yoga. Third chapter is Karma Yoga. The word yoga can come in many different meanings. Okay. So don't think that yoga used in this context for 18 chapters is really some kind of a yoga like you say, correct? Nowadays different types of yoga is there. Heart yoga, what not. Even beer yoga and all is there. People are talking about, I don't know what it is. So this yoga here actually means a subject matter. Subject matter also can be called a yoga. So the subject matter of that chapter is Arjuna's Vishada, means his whatever, his affliction, lamentation. Because Arjuna becomes distressed suddenly, looking at that he has to fight this war and kill his own people, his own gurus, his own cousins, his own friends, his own grandfather. And suddenly, till then, in fact, he was a warrior. He tells Krishna, take this chariot and place it in such a place that I can see all this entire battlefield. I want to see everybody who is there against me. There he is commanding Krishna, because at that time Krishna is just a charioteer for him. But once he sees everybody and then he becomes distressed, his hands are shaking, he's not able to fight anymore, he's not able to hold his bow also. Then he starts giving lot of reasons why he should not fight this war, and how this war will be a terrible thing. And finally he puts his bow down and he sits quietly. Then in the second chapter, Bhagavan, even then Krishna is talking only as Mr. Krishna, not as Bhagavan yet. Okay. Krishna says, Krishna in fact chides Arjuna. He uses very harsh words. He says, what is this? Klaibyam masmagam of partha, naitattvai upapadyate, shudram hridaya daurbalyam, tektvatishta parantapa, and all he says. He tells, what is this? Do not be such a weakling. Okay. Give up all this and get up and fight. That's what Arjuna is just giving him some advice. Then Arjuna becomes hurt. He says, don't think that I have put all these things down because I'm weak or I'm afraid or I don't have courage. But I'm genuinely moved that how can I kill my gurus? Guru nahatvani mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaksham api haloke. Like that he goes on. How will I kill my own gurus? And still how can I be happy? In fact, if I kill these people, even if I go to Swarga, even there I will not be happy. He says that. So he sees that if he wins the battle also, he is not going to be happy. If he loses the battle also, he is not going to be happy. So he is now in a state where he is not happy any which way. Then he suddenly recognizes the fundamental problem. As an individual, you have this fundamental problem as a human being. So now he tells Krishna, you teach me what is Shreyas, what is Moksha, what is ultimately good for me. You teach me that. And I am your Shishya. But at least he has the confidence to say that I am qualified to be your Shishya. Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. So I have surrendered to you. Please teach me because I am your Shishya. And then Krishna starts the teaching. So then Krishna says what? Ashocyan Anvashochastam. That's how Bhagavad Gita starts. In fact, Bhagavad Gita starts as Ashocyan and ends last 18th chapter, Ma Shucha, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, Ham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha, Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha, Ma Shuchaha Ashocyan. Means what? Ashocyan means also that which should not be grieved for. Those things for which you should not really grieve. Like that it starts. And how does it end? Do not grieve. Ma shuchaha. So means what? Bhagavad Gita, the entire Shastra is about getting you out of grief, sorrow. Atma with shokam tarati. Like that Upanishad also says. The one who knows himself crosses all sorrow. So this Vedanta itself, for a human being, why it is relevant? Why it is relevant universally? Because we say Krishna is Jagat Guru, correct? Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. That's how we started this class. Why Krishna can be a Jagat Guru? Why our gurus can be Jagat Guru? They can be Guru for the entire world means because the problem they are addressing is universal. It is a fundamental problem of all human beings, whether you are born here or some other country or in some North Pole, you are an Eskimo, or you are living in Tirunelveli, wherever you are, you face the same problem as a human being, and the solution being offered also is universal. That is why Krishna says that I will take care of everything. Don't worry. So he says that, okay, and when he says that, he has to back it up with the teaching. It is not just an advice anymore. So he says, Asocyan anvashochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase. So you are worrying for things for which you should not be really worrying, but you are talking like as though you are a wise person. Wise people do not worry for those who are living or those who have already lived and gone. Why? In fact, Krishna straight away talks about the thing for which at least everybody in the world normally we say that it is legitimate to grieve for certain things, correct? So particularly death. If death has happened, if somebody's death has happened, means we say that okay, you can grieve. In fact, we have a mourning period and all that. But what does Krishna say? That is all fine. But wise people do not grieve even for death. Death is like the Prathama Mallanyaya, we say. If you want to become the world champion in wrestling, what do? You don't have to fight all the 6 billion people or 7 billion people in the world. You go and directly fight with the current world champion. If you beat him, then you are the world champion. Like that, Krishna straight away takes death and says, wise people will not grieve even for death. Death itself cannot be a cause for grieving because Atma never dies. What is dying is only the body. You are not the body. Yourself is something separate from the body. Okay. In fact, it is the self in all the bodies. Even if you don't know that, if you still think you are an individual also, even then your self does not die. That also Krishna says. So whichever way you look at it, the self never dies. Okay. And if you talk about the individual self, it takes one more body, he says. Like even discarding a worn out shirt, correct? He gives that analogy. We discard worn out shirts, wear a new shirt. Like that, this Atma also is taking another body. So self never dies. In fact, self never kills, nor it can be killed. All this he is talking about the nature of oneself as the limitless conscious being. It is the only thing which is satyam. Everything else is mithya. It is the only thing which is there really. See, what is truth is something which can never be negated in any period of time. Always it is the same. See, once you have ascertained as this, it never changes its nature. That which can never be negated alone can be known as truth. In fact, there are some confusing statements by some people. Some people say truth is a pathless land. Truth cannot be defined and all that. That's not true. Our Shastra is very clear. Bhashyakara, Shankara is very clear. Shankara in the Taittiriya Upanishad, he is defining Satyam. What is Satyam? What is truth? Means Yadrupena yen nischitam bhavati tadrupena tanna vyabhicharati iti Satyam, he says. That which you determine as this, once it is ascertained as this, it never changes in any period of time. Always it is the same. That which can never be negated alone is truth. So this definition nobody can break. Okay. And then next question is there anything like that? Because I can negate everything as not this, not this. These are all changing, coming and going. It's all mithya, maya. But the negator can never be negated. Understand that. There has to be a negator. Even if physical vacuum is there, who is the one who is cognizing that? Without consciousness, there is no cognition, there is no knowledge. You are that conscious being who can never be negated, who is the eternal subject, who is the invariable in every cognition. We are all focusing on the object of knowledge and leaving or taking for granted that which is obvious, which is yourself. Every cognition is actually resolving in only you, the conscious being. The conscious being alone is the invariable. What is variable is the object of knowledge. The knower is always the invariable conscious being, and that knower alone is Satyam. Everything else is changing, doesn't have the same order of reality. This is the truth which Arjuna is taught. Okay. So this self can never be destroyed because it is never an object. In fact, only an object of knowledge can be. In fact, Krishna goes to a great lengths to explain that. He says it cannot be cut, it cannot be drowned, it cannot be burnt, it cannot be dried by the wind. All that he is giving. Okay. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo shoshya evacha nitya sarvagata sthanuhu achaloyam sanatanaha avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate. Like that he talks about in the second. Initially he is only talking about this nature of self and points out to Arjuna that the self can never be destroyed. Self is never an actor also, because it is neither an actor nor does it make anybody to do anything, and it can never be objectified also. Okay. It is aprameya. It cannot be, it is an eternal subject, correct? It is a pramata only, always. In fact, even the status of being a subject is only temporary, because you being the subject depends on whether an object of cognition is there or not. If both subject and object are not there also, you are there as a conscious being. That is your nature. So that self can never be destroyed. That is the vision of the Veda, and that self is infinite, limitless. It doesn't lack anything. That is the vision of the Veda. But to understand that, you have to prepare yourself. So Bhagavan then says, I will now teach you yoga. Okay. Yoge tvam shrinu and all, he says. I will now talk about yoga. You listen to that. Then he talks about, he calls it buddhi yoga, or karma yoga is called buddhi yoga because it's a yoga of attitude. You do karma, but with a different attitude. Because karma by itself is not going to give you moksha. Knowledge only will give you moksha. But Bhagavan is telling Arjuna, you now do this karma. This doing battle also is your duty, your karma. But you have to do it with a different attitude. The attitude is what? For purifying one's own mind. Okay, antakarana shuddhaye, for the purpose of purifying oneself. So if I say you have to purify yourself, purify your mind means what? Then I have to define what is impurity, correct? What is impurity? in the vision of our Shastra is Raga and Dvesha. Likes and dislikes are the impurities. Why do we say that? Because likes and dislikes only make you do adharma one way. Thereby you are gaining papa. But that is only a worldly view. More importantly, when you look upon as one with likes and dislikes means what? You are a wanting person. The implications of likes and dislikes is that you are a wanting person. You are a wanting person means you are a limited person. Unless you think you lack something, you are not going to want anything. And likes and dislikes are only perpetuating the fact that you are a wanting person. But the vision of the Veda is totally opposite. The Veda's vision is that you are not a wanting person. You are Purnaha. You are complete. You are whole. You are full already. You don't need anything to be happy. You are the source of all happiness. That's what Veda is revealing about you. You are the limitless conscious being who is the source of all happiness. So to know that, you cannot have, you cannot even by implication be a wanting person. That is why first you have to purify yourself of your likes and dislikes. And how do I purify myself of my likes and dislikes? I do my duty whether I like it or not. I do what is right in a given situation in spite of my likes and dislikes. This way I learn to neutralize my likes and dislikes. You can still have preferences, that is different, but you don't have any binding likes and dislikes. Raga Dvesha is binding because you think that if I don't have this, I cannot be happy. That is one sort of problem. Another problem is if I have this, I cannot be happy. So you dislike that. If I don't have it, I cannot be happy is like. If I have this, I cannot be happy is dislike. Both are a problem. And both are only implying you are a wanting person. You are lacking something. You are subjected to sorrow. All these things are all ignorance only, really. So you have to be the master of your likes and dislikes. You cannot be a slave of your likes and dislikes. Because even though you know what is right and wrong, if you do something wrong, why do you do it? Because of likes and dislikes only. So they are only pressurizing you. You become a slave of your own likes and dislikes. When the likes and dislikes are swaying you, you are only a slave. You are pressured by that. That Duryodhana is that only he says, Janami dharmam nachame pravrittihi, Janami adharmam nachame nivrittihi, kenapi devena hridistitena yatha niyuktosmi tata karomi, he says. So I know what is dharma, but I don't have any inclination to pursue that. I know what is adharma, but I cannot get out of it. As though some deva is sitting within me and he is impelling me to do all these things. What is that deva here? It is raga dvesha only. In fact, that is why even every year we have a kamo karshit, manyura karshit, namo namaha, and we even uh, look upon kama and manyu, this desire and anger and all as devatas, and do namaskara to them. You have only done everything whatever I have done, really in speak. So every year you ask for forgiveness. All that is there in our culture. So we have to be free. We have to be the master of our likes and dislikes. That is the first step. That is called chitta shuddhi, antakarana shuddhi. Then you also have to gain certain ability to focus your mind. Antakarana naischalyam, we say. It cannot be distracted. Both are very important. And for antakarana shuddhi, you have to do karma. You cannot just give up everything. See, Arjuna, the problem with Arjuna is Bhagavan talked about the nature of Atma. And then he said, Knowing the truth about yourself only is going to give you moksha, freedom. It's only going to give you ananda, make you free from all sorrow. But then he tells Arjuna, do karma with yoga buddhi. When he told these two things in the second chapter, Arjuna also asked finally. Already he must have had doubts, but he asked, what is the what is the nature of a wise man and all? Sita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sitadi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim and all. He asked, what are the characteristics of a wise person? How does he talk? How does he sit? How does he go about his life? Means that Bhagavan does not literally answer all these things. Okay, he does not say if somebody who has a long beard is a wise man. He sits very slowly. He talks with a certain air. All that he did not say. He says that Rajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyeva atmana tushtaha. The one who has won over all the desires and one who is happy being oneself, one who does not require anything to be happy, one who is happy being oneself, that person is the wise person. And he talks about the nature of wise person like that. There also Bhagavan did not talk about any karma. So when the nature of a wise person is talked about, all it was talked about was Bhagavan says that he is free from all desires, from all wants. He is limitless really. And all, even if some desires and all that is there, it is all like the rivers flowing into the sea. And the vision of the wise man is different, he said, from the others. Those who are doing karma and those who are stuck in karma and karma phala, these ignorant people, their vision is different. It is like day and night. What the ignorant people see as day, the jnani is seeing as night, he told that. And what the jnani sees as day, the ignorant people are seeing as night. That much difference is there between the jnani and the ajnani. Okay. So, if that is the case, then Arjuna in the third chapter beginning now here. Otherwise, Bhagavad Gita is over with second chapter itself. Understand that because all the topics of Bhagavad Gita are covered in the second chapter itself. The Moksha Shastra is talked about initially, nature of Atma. Then Yoga Shastra is also talked about, Karma Yoga. Doing karma with Yoga Buddhi. Doing karma not for karma phala but to purify one's own mind. Having equanimity towards the results of action. Recognizing the fact that I only have freedom to do, but the results of action are given by Bhagavan only. Bhagavan being manifest as everything. Bhagavan is the giver of everything. Bhagavan is the giver of our karma phala also. Whatever you do, how much ever effort you put, our experience is that the result can be anything because there are too many variables which I am not aware of. Too many unknown variables are there which also affect the result of my action. So we say that Bhagavan only is the karma phala data. So you have freedom with respect to action because you have a free will. You can do, you need not do, you can do it differently. But the action is not in your hands. Don't think you are the author of your results of action. If you think like that, then you are always a failure. Everybody is a failure because you can think of your own life. So many desires you had, only a few of them you can fulfill. It is true for everybody. So everybody, so our tradition, what the definition of success itself is different. Understand that. It is not based on whether you have fulfilled your likes and dislikes or your desires and all that. If you have that as a criteria, everybody is a failure. But our criteria is different. When are you successful? You are successful when you are able to master your likes and dislikes. You are able to manage your likes and dislikes. You are free enough to do the right thing. Then you are successful. Correct? When do you have real freedom? Real freedom is not to abuse, misuse, or do whatever you like. You cannot abuse, misuse your free will. Of course, free will still can be subjected to abuse and misuse. That's why it is free will. But real freedom is the freedom to do the right thing in spite of your likes and dislikes. Then you are the master. You are a swarat. Okay, you are the master then. Otherwise, you are only a slave of your likes and dislikes. So the success is defined differently, and that success one has to attain first. Then only you can even become qualified for this knowledge. So Bhagavan talked about both, that you recognize Bhagavan as the Karmapala Data and develop certain samatvam, yoga uchyate, equanimity, and then you gain mastery over your likes and dislikes. And then Karma Yoga itself then will lead you to Jnanam and Moksha. That is the vision Bhagavan had for Arjuna, but Arjuna still wants to run away and become a sannyasi because he has seen lot of people taking to sannyasa. Those who exclusively pursue only knowledge are sannyasis. They have given up all other roles. But Arjuna is still not, he is still a grihastha. Normally, our ashrama dharma is what? You have brahmacharya, where you are a student. You have your own duties as a student. Then you become a householder, grihastha. There you have your own duties. Then you take vanaprastha, is more like a retirement. You are still married, but you live a certain type of life where you have given up all active pursuits, all other pursuits. You are now, in fact, doing more upasana, more japa, all those things. You are dedicated to, again, other pursuits, spiritual pursuits, you can say. You are preparing yourself, and then you can take sannyasa, where you give up everything. That is the normal ashrama dharma. But even in the Veda, it is said, Yad ahareva vrajet, tad ahareva pravrajet. That also is there. On the day you have total dispassion, then you can take sannyasa. But that is all exceptional case. Understand that. So Bhagavan did not think Arjuna is capable of becoming a sannyasi, because if an ineligible person becomes a sannyasi does not have any legitimate ways of even fulfilling his desires. Understand that. Because he has voluntarily given up. What is legitimate for a grihastha is not legitimate for a sannyasi. The grihastha still has, dharmically, the grihastha can pursue artha and kama. Sannyasi cannot. So unless you have the pakwa, the maturity, one cannot become a sannyasi. So this is what Arjuna did not understand. So in the third chapter beginning, he asked a question. He says, Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojesi keshava, he asked. So he says, if in comparison to karma, jnana is better, if you say, then why are you asking me to engage in this ghora karma? He says, this fight where I have to kill so many people, my own people. Why are you asking me to engage in this? In fact, he goes one step further and he says, Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me. So with confusing words, as though confusing, he adds, the as though is the saving grace. As though confusing words, you are as though deluding me. He says, Tadekam vada nischitya yena shreyo hamapniyam. He says. So you tell me one thing which is better for me, whether karma or sannyasa, I will do. Then only Bhagavan tells this. He says, see, I have given, now Bhagavan is talking as Bhagavan, because he says, Pura Prokta. In the beginning, I have given two committed lifestyle for everybody. One lifestyle is of Karma Yoga. That is for majority of people. In fact, nowadays, I will even say 99.99 people should get married and be yogis, Karma Yogi. Karma Yoga is the safe option. Karma yoga with Shastra Shravanam also will lead you to sannyasa. This this other sannyasa lifestyle is for exceptional cases only. If others also, some people take to sannyasa also with some romantic ideas and all that. They think that they can go and sit in the Himalayas peacefully and all that. But you don't know about the cold or whatever. So many things. Just looking at a photo, you don't get enamored of things. If you go really and sit there, you will know all the problems. So, sannyasa is not something which one should consider even very lightly. That is for exceptional cases only, really. In fact, everybody can become a sannyasi. See, in sannyasa also there are different types of sannyasa. Here, when Bhagavan says Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, the word Sankhya also is an interesting word. Sankhya means Samyak Khyayate, that which is uh, revealed very well by the Veda, the knowledge is called Sankhya. And Sankhya is that which is actually, the knowledge itself is Sankhya, and that which reveals that knowledge is called Sankhya. And also those who are committed to that knowledge exclusively are also known as Sankhya. So here Sankhya means those who have taken up sannyasa ashrama, because those who have taken up the sannyasa ashrama are exclusively committed only to knowledge. They have only two roles, either as a student or a teacher. And when you are taking sannyasa as a student, it is called vividisha sannyasa. Vividisha means what? With the desire to know yourself. You have now simplified your life by giving up all other roles so that you can only pursue this knowledge. But that's not an easy lifestyle. Just because giving up all karma, you cannot, don't think that it's very easy. Sitting without doing anything also is a karma, in fact, because willfully sitting without doing anything becomes a problem for many people. In the lockdown, now in fact, everybody will know that even better, correct? Sitting at home itself is a big karma. Without doing anything, sitting there is a, if you do it willfully, that also is actually action only. In inaction also there is action, because willfully if you are not doing anything, it becomes a big burden, problem. Okay, so don't think that just doing not anything means you can become sannyasi and all that. Similarly, doing something also you can become a sannyasi. How? That is called vidvat sannyasa. Because even while doing something, if you know that your reality is that you are not a doer, you are not a doer, you are not an enjoyer, you are not a karta bhokta, that knowledge, karma yoga will lead you to that knowledge only. With yoga buddhi, you do karma, you prepare yourself, you become mature, you overcome your likes and dislikes. You do also upasana, nitya karma you do, every day you do japa, you also gain certain chitta naishchalyam. Then you do Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam, you attend classes, you study. Swadhyaya you do every day, you study. Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Upanishad itself says every day you have to study. In fact, in one Purana it is saying every day you have to study these things, five things. Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranama, Sri Rudram. Like this, it is giving one list also, interestingly. So these things you do means you will know yourself as the limitless conscious being who is not a karta bhokta, who is not a doer, who is not an enjoyer. So with that knowledge, whatever you do, you can still be doing as an individual. Your very individuality itself is not real. Individuality is something, is only an appearance in you. Correct? So you can still be a in action, knowing that you are not the actor. That is Vidvat Sannyasa. That is real Naishkarmyam, Bhagavan says. Just giving up karma alone is not Naishkarmyam. Naishkarmyam means the status of being one without any karma. The status of being without karma, Naishkarmyam. That status is your reality, in fact. Knowing that you are not a karta means you have attained Naishkarmyam. Not by just not. If you are willfully not doing anything, you are still a karta. You understand? Because you are taking yourself as a karta and trying to not do anything. That is not Naishkarmya. Naishkarmya is knowing that my reality is this limitless consciousness which does not really do anything, in fact. I am akarta, bhokta. So, Vidvat Sannyasa, Pashyan, Shrinvan, Sprishan, Jigran, Ashnan, Swashan, Swapan, Pralapan, Visrijan, Grinnan, Unmishan, Nimishan, Napi, Indriyan, Indriyarteshu, Vartantaiti, Dharayan, Brahmanyadhaya Karmani. Like that, Bhagavan in the 5th chapter also he says, even while you are seeing, while hearing, while touching, while smelling, while eating, Ashnan, Gachan, while going, Swapan, Shwasan, while sleeping, dreaming, while even breathing, all these things you are doing, still you are not a karta. While doing all these things, only you are not doing it. Because only indriyan indriyarteshu artante. The senses are engaged with the sense objects. I have nothing to do with that. I am free. Even while the senses are all active, I am free. I don't have any identity with these senses, body, mind, sense complex. That is Vidvat Sannyasa. And then there is Apat Sannyasa also. At the time of death, you can take sannyasa. Some people do that. In fact, Shankara himself, his mother was not giving him permission to take sannyas. So he was caught by a crocodile in the river, and then his mother gave him permission. Then the crocodile left him. Then he became a sannyasi and he went all over India and all that. So that is what Shankara's story is also one of Apat Sannyasa. But here Arjuna is not talking about Apat Sannyasa anyway. But Arjuna is very well aware of the sannyasa ashrama and he had a certain fascination for that because he thought it is the easy way out right now. But Bhagavan is pointing out he is not yet qualified for that. And in fact, Bhagavan has given two committed lifestyles. Both are for moksha only. And he has to do karma with yoga buddhi, whatever may be the karma. It may be easy karma, difficult karma. Dharma is not easy. Understand that. Leading a life of dharma, doing the right thing, nobody says is an easy life, but it is the one which will give you satisfaction, which is the one which will give you happiness eventually. Is that clear? So, even if it is ghora karma, do it with yoga buddhi. So, that is what was pointed out here. So, I hope you got the context of this. There are two lifestyles. All other sadhana are all part of karma yoga only. Understand that. There are n number of sadhanas you can do. Whatever people now call as different types of yoga, because it is like a spiritual supermarket nowadays. Everybody is teaching some technique or the other. It's all, it is giving something to people, correct? It's all popular. You gain something from that. Whatever helps you psychologically feel, to make you feel peaceful about yourself, to accept yourself, it's all useful. Okay, there are sadhana wise, there are n number of sadhana. All of them will fall under the karma yoga only. It's all preparation for this knowledge. But knowledge alone can give you moksha. For that, two committed lifestyle. One, you exclusively pursue only knowledge. Another, you do all the karma, but with a different attitude, still focused on moksha. So without moksha and without appreciating Bhagavan as the karma pala data, there is no karma yoga. Understand that. Simply doing social service also is not karma yoga. People can do social service and only to get some fame, correct? Nowadays with social media, it is becoming even more. Everybody is taking some photo and putting it and trying to gain some fame. Social service is good. I'm not decrying that. At least it shows certain maturity on the person to think beyond oneself and one family and all that. But social service in itself cannot become karma yoga. The attitude is the most important thing for Karma Yoga, and that attitude you will get only by appreciating what is moksha, and Bhagavan is the karma paladata, and whatever results of action is coming to you, everything is coming from the altar of Bhagavan. It's all prasada. The concept of prasada all Indians understand easily, correct? Whenever we go to any temple, any puja, anywhere, even in our own home, we offer everything to the Lord and then take it from the altar of the Lord. And whatever comes from the altar of the Lord, we do not complain. We take it happily, equanimously. Whether you get a laddu or whether you get ash, you don't complain. Or you get some tirtha, some water. Everything you are able to accept. Prasada itself is not any one object. Understand that. Your attitude towards that object makes it prasada. That prasada buddhi only you have to extrapolate. If you are a karma yogi, you look upon all the results of action as coming from Bhagavan's altar, and that is all prasada only. Then you can accept it equanimously. Whether it is as per your expectation or not, if you are able to accept it, there is no sorrow anymore. Understand that sorrow, sadness, pain, everything is coming because of non-acceptance of the reality. Denial only leads you to sorrow. So anyway, this karma yoga is the one. If you want to be successful in life, do karma with yoga buddhi. There is no other way. And that is the lifestyle which Bhagavan has given to us, this path. So that you can pursue. But whichever lifestyle you pursue, why are you pursuing that? To know yourself as Brahman, the limitless. Brahman, the word itself is coming from Brihi Vriddhau Dhatu. Brihi Vriddhau means that which is big, that which is great. Now, big can be an adjective. There can be a big mosquito, there can be a big mountain also. So big as an adjective has certain parimana, correct? Some measurement and all that, some measure. But big here is noun. It's not an adjective. Without any qualification, big, limitless. That is Brahman. And that is the only thing to be known really. That's what Bhagavan here says. This is the 13th chapter. We have directly jumped to the 13th chapter. In the 13th chapter, this is called Kshetrajna Yoga. What is Kshetram? What is Kshetra? Who is Kshetrajna? Object and subject. Bhagavan is talking of the field of objects and the subject, the one who knows the field. Correct? And that knower is not separate from this limitless Brahman, and the knower is the only one who has to be known properly. Understand it? So in fact, he even talks about all the values you have to gain. Amanitvam adam vidvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham sthairyam vinigraha. Like that, from 13:7 onwards, he talks about all the values you have to cultivate. 20 different things he lists. He calls them also jnanam, because by having these values you will gain knowledge. Because in Sanskritam you have all this vyutpatti, we say there is a karana vyutpatti, correct? Instrumental way of understanding something. See, even in English it is there, correct? Cooker means by which you cook is called cooker, correct? But normally comes as the karta. Walker means, walker also is, again, walker is an interesting word. Walker can mean a person who is walking. Also nowadays, if old people are using walker, correct? By which you walk also is called walker. Similarly, jnanam can mean knowledge, or by which you gain knowledge also can be called jnanam. So all the values he first lists from 13:7 to 13:11, they are all called jnanam. And then he says, now, whatever is to be known, that I am going to tell you. Nyayam yattat pravakshyami. What is to be known, that I will tell you. And again, knowing which what? Yajñātva amritam. By knowing which you will gain immortality, you will cross mortality. In fact, you will become free of space-time itself. You transcend space-time. And such a thing, there is only one thing, correct? All other objects, you know, you are not going to transcend anything because all the objects are in space time. In fact, you are the only one who transcends the space time. In you, the space time is there. How can I understand this? Hey, every night in dream, you are creating a totally new space time, correct? Space time is in you. You are not in space time. But in the waking state, the ignorance, the mistake you make is that you think you are one of the actors in this space time called waking, and you take yourself to be limited. But in reality, you are not in space time. Space time is in you. It's appearing in you. It's only an appearance in you. So that being the case, that Brahman, that limitless only you have to know. And what is that? Anadimat Param Brahma. So by knowing which you will gain limitlessness, you will be free of mortality. What is that? Anadimat Param Brahma. Anadimat means what? That which does not have any beginning. Anadi. Beginningless, causeless, because it transcends time itself. Beginning is only a temporal concept, correct? But Brahman transcends time. Time is in Brahman, correct? Not Brahman in time. So it is beginningless and it is Param, it is limitless, endless, that Brahman. And how do I understand that Brahman? It is not something Nasat, Na Asat also. Because in general, in the objective world, we say this is there, this is not there, correct? Existent, non-existent, and all that. But again, this existent, non-existent as an adjective, when we are using for objects, you can use that still, but itself is a very problematic usage. But in reality, that which transcends both existent and non-existent with reference to space-time is what? The cognizer of the space-time, correct? Cognizer of all the objects, which is you. You as a subject, as a conscious being, as the one who is invariable in every cognition, you are different from any object. You are not any of the objects in this world. In fact, you are not even the subject, because the status of subject also comes and goes. If only there is an object to cognize, you are a subject. You are different from both subject and object. That's why Bhagavan says this Brahman is both, it is different from what you think as existent and non-existent, correct? Because it transcends time. Within space-time, you can talk about this exists, this does not exist, and all that. But Brahman is something which transcends that barrier. It is you. I exist without space-time. When I am in deep sleep, there is no space-time, there are no objects to cognize, but I am there. I sleep, I dream, I am awake. I is the invariable in all three states. I is the invariable even if I look back in my life. I was a baby, I was a child, I was youth, I am now somebody. The I, Dehinos mean yatha dehe, kaumaram yavanam jara. Like that Bhagavan also says. The Dehi is I, the one who indwells in the body. That I never changes. Body is changing. Body only changes. There is a baby's body, young man's body, now middle-aged body, old body, everything. But I is the invariable, unchanging reality of you. This I never changes. That is the only Satyam, and that is limitless. So that is the vision which Bhagavan is now giving us here. That is the only thing you have to know. So here we will stop and then we'll continue next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay, so somebody, how to be consistent? So I'm not very clear about that question. Anyway, see, if you have any questions, you can send it to us through WhatsApp also. I'll try to take it up. Okay. Since we have 4 more classes, we can address some of your questions also. But try to assimilate whatever you are learning, and then any doubts also will be clarified. Okay. Oh.